Thanks everyone for joining today's talk. I am Niranjan. Thank you, Virus Bulletin, for having me here again. Um, so, I'm the Director of Threat Hunting Service at CyberProof. My colleague Deepak could not join today's talk. He's the CTI lead who was primarily investigating this attack story. Now, kudos to Proofpoint team, and I'll tell you why and how their analysis has helped our investigation so far. Fully transparent, just want to set expectation that this is kind of an ongoing investigation from one of the customers that we onboarded in the recent weeks. And I'm continuously learning about this particular threat groups. When I say groups, initially it looked as if it was only one threat actor group behind an organization in Southeast Asia that we were onboarding to our base. I also learned from Team T5 today that they were investigating these groups for a very long time. So, there has been a lot of reports about Chinese threat groups targeting semiconductor industry for a very long time. APT 41 has clearly mentioned that this targeting of semiconductor industry is likely in line with China's 5-year plan. More details here. Now, when we onboarded this particular customer, there were lots of alerts, and then we had to fine-tune and cluster some of these alerts to understand what we are dealing with. Like the other researchers who were talking about these Chinese threat groups, we could not find a lot of data to connect our stories. We could not get ideas about how did the threat actors gain initial access or footprint, what was the vulnerability they exploited to gain access, and so on. So, bear with me, a lot of details, we don't have it in the coming slides. We are still investigating and learning. But one thing is for sure that we continue to see more and more files from different data sources in recent weeks in VirusTotal and few other data feeds that we have, likely of Chinese origin, targeting South Asian region. Cisco blogged about a campaign. Again, they mentioned that there were two groups. One is Nikon and another group. Again, Nikon relied on PlugX rat, which has been active for a very long time, targeting South Asian region, and the blog went out live yesterday. So we are facing these difficulties due to the lack in telemetry and the data that we were able to get from customers. So here are some of those top approaches we took as soon as we started seeing handful set of alerts from the security solution that the customer was having. So we performed MITRE-based hunting. I'm part of threat hunting, so my language and explanation would be aligned to that. We could not get actual payload during our investigation, so we could not reverse engineer the binary to add credits to the attribution angle of the story. So that's another gap we had. So we performed MITRE-based hunting, we based Intel-based hunting, and custom-based hunting. So whatever we knew about the signals that we were able to collect during these efforts, we just tried to enrich further, and we started fine-tuning our existing hunting queries to make it better, to possibly get additional details during that hunting effort. And then we looked around the context of the results, backtracked the events to identify if we could get more related TTPs associated with certain campaigns, just like how we all do. So some of them were like, we looked for suspicious TLDs, like .shop, .space, and so on, to see what kind of network outbound connections were seen. We definitely checked for DLL sideloading related EDR alerts. We checked for process injection and process doppelganging related alerts as well, for the reason that in the recent times, some of these Chinese groups also used SecTop rat in one of the campaigns. And for the last 18 months or more, you would have known about this ClickFix campaign. A lot of IDAT loader or hijack loader was the other name given by CrowdStrike, was deployed and adopted by over 7 to 8 info stealers. One of them was SecTop rat that was injecting into msbuild.exe and so on. And the process injection technique used was process doppelganging. So we used these combinations to possibly get some additional details from the logs when we were onboarding this particular customer. And a lot of times we were not getting the actual data that we were looking for. Google Calendar used for C2, the other researchers talked about that. That's because we read about these campaigns leveraging Google Calendar for C2 and Google Sheet for C2, sorry. So we checked for that. Again, we could not find that. On the victimology side, because of this group's interest of targeting entities or organizations in this area for a quite decent time, so we checked what could have been the motivation behind the attack. Have they announced some big deals or semiconductor-related announcements or geopolitical-related discussions that would have lured the threat actors targeting them? So we checked from that part and then checked for lures with those names to possibly identify the dropper that could have led this infection chain. We could not. Proofpoint had some, lure documents, poison documents that led to the infection. I have it in the next couple of slides. We observed some file patterns. The same or kind of similar was also reported by Proofpoint. You had Chinese names. There were double extension files dropped on the machine, mostly LNK file, something like file name .pdf.lnk. So that matched, and that's how we linked some hints to Proofpoint's blog, saying that we are possibly looking at something similar to what they have reported on. So we, used a combination of all this and studied the results that we got, and we are trying to collect more information. As I said, this is the expectation. It's a loose story because we are still learning what was happening in the customer's environment, and we could not get a lot of evidences. So we used all sort of permutation combination around all this hunting techniques and the results that we got. So one of the emails that Proofpoint blogged about was, on this particular theme, anything related to Taiwan, was probably of high interest to the attackers. The applicant's name, Zhu Hao, was also used in a PDF file. There was another job applicant-related document that was used as a lure to attract victim. So we use some metadata property from these files, like files created by, files modified by, and so on. Checked in VirusTotal, we couldn't get much detail. We checked by submitter ID and submissions from Taiwan and nearby countries to check if we are able to get additional IOCs from the regions. Again, we could not get. We spoke with the customer to understand, based on the past alerts that they have seen, that could add some value to our investigations. Again, there were no luck. Here is another, email body that Proofpoint shared in their blog, but one of those files was there in VirusTotal, and the URL that you see is attacker controlled. So you could see that there's a PowerShell script that could download a zip file. The zip file had a PDF file, an exe, and a component that it could sideload. So these were like the loose bits and bits that we were able to collect based on Proofpoint's blog and from the telemetry data that we had for that particular customer. Now, what we learned during this time was that, Proofpoint said that there were 3 threat actor groups tied to Chinese origin targeting the region. Cisco blogged yesterday saying like there are 2 threat groups likely targeting the region of Chinese origin. Google just published a blog a few minutes before, but that is again on Chinese origin, slightly different. It's very difficult for us to pivot through all these blogs to understand what are we dealing with. I will not speak on the attribution part, but slightly we had some hints related to APT 41. Again, Team T10 talked about that group, one of the most sophisticated group. But having 2 groups targeting a particular organization or the region makes it very difficult, but it gave us a hint that not just us, Cisco and Proofpoint also believes that there were some code sharing or resource sharing happening during this time. So it makes attribution difficult for the obvious reason. But on the left side, you have one infection chain, and on the right side, you have another payload's infection chain. Left side is delivering Cobalt Strike. The right one is for Vladimir backdoor. Vladimir backdoor is tied to Chinese group for a very long time. I think Zscaler, Mandiant, Proofpoint's blog talks about that. This one on the left side, of Proofpoint's blog had some IPs mentioned, and one of those IPs was actually seen in our customer's environment, and that's how we feel that we are looking at something related. But if you see the infection chain is almost identical. It starts with an email with password-protected archive. It gets extracted, and then you have DLL sideloading happening. There is a VBS script that launches the attack. In both the cases, there are PDF files that gets launched as a Lure document. On the left side part, as I said, it's a Cobalt Strike related infection. There was an XOR key, RC4 key, that stood out. We were able to get additional hashes. I'll show you in the next couple of slides. There was this particular IP that we used as one pivotal point. We leveraged Shodan census and Validin to understand more from the infrastructure side. Since this customer was getting onboarded and had multiple alerts, he was definitely unhappy with what was happening in the network. The first thing that we could do from a service standpoint was at least let him be aware about what is happening, and we only focused on getting additional IOCs that we could share with him and have some blacklisting in his environment, because telemetry was not giving us the complete picture of infection chain, and we are still investigating on this story. So when we did infrastructure hunting on one of those IPs, we checked for the host banner and port 443, which is tied to Cobalt Strike. We found a certain SSL certificate and some values. This is how we all do, right? We try to get additional hash values or pointers or notables, and then we start hunting based on that to get additional details. Based on that value, we found additional details here, as you can see, like 20 other values, 12 different IPs. And one of them was giving us hints to, I think, gomeeting.com. We also read it from Mandian's blog and few other, I think Kaspersky's blog, that this particular group is known to either shut down its infrastructure for some time, but possibly use its SSL certificate to another domain, and they keep rotating that way. So that is one reason why we started leveraging Shodan in different ways. So you add more hash values or pointers to your searches, like onto the banner response, you get 12 more values. Some infrastructure that goes inactive, Validin would possibly give you some information around that. So when we checked in Validin, there was another banner hash, JARM fingerprint. So we leveraged that, or we could use FOFO. In this case, we checked for the facet value, facet analysis. There was few other values that we could get. There was one other domain that stood out, which was slack.com, slightly using the similar SSL certificate. So these kind of hints are kind of broken pieces. We could not tie it up too much. But then, there were two other IPs that stood out. The 112 value that you see there, 149 and 49 and 209. Initially, they were seen using SSL certificates linked to slack.com, but it has transitioned to gomeeting.com. If you see the timeline there, it's close to about less than 20 days. So that gives us a hint that let's try to pivot through these points to find further evidences. Unfortunately, we could not get anything from the customer's network. So either the attack was partially successful or blocked, or they are still targeting them after some time. So these are the loose points we have from this story. There were a list of ASN records that we believe could have been responsible for the infrastructure side of supporting this particular attack. These were the ones. So we share that with customer. And the RC4 key that we got, simple Yara rule or checking for that content value within the binaries in VirusTotal, gave a list of hash values. One of those DLLs was mentioned in Proofpoint blog, the JLI.dll. There were a few others, but the code similarity part didn't match too much. So again, leaves us to a point if we are dealing with the same groups or a slightly different group, but the RC4 value is kind of unique, right? So we checked on that angle, but could not connect to the real intrusion that was hitting that particular customer. Some of the samples were found connecting to another IP that was reported in that particular blog, and they had that metadata pointing to some Chinese metadata information. Again, we are not very sure if it's a false flag. That's something that a lot of threat actors do intentionally to trick the researchers from attributing it inaccurately. So this is pretty much it that I have for now, and we don't know to the fullest extent of what we are dealing with. We are learning through the other blogs from other competitors. For now, these were the IOCs that we have shared with that particular customer, trying to requesting them to block it for now. The IR team is engaged, so we would like to see what other new details are out there that we could uncover based on the other customers we are onboarding from the region. So that's pretty much it. It was a short talk. We are continuing to learn, and if we find anything new, we would come up with a new blog in the coming days. Thanks, everyone.